Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order our meeting for Tuesday, April 16th at 6 p.m. I'm going to pass it over to CAO to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge that I am an ally of Indigenous peoples. The township of Lucan Biddulph is located on the treaty and traditional territory and ancestral lands of many Indigenous peoples and is covered by several Upper Canada treaties. We recognize and celebrate the contributions of Indigenous communities and our shared cultural heritage. Lucan Biddulph is now home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples and communities that have a unique relationship with the land and its resources and continue to shape the history and economy of the township. We recognize the unique role Indigenous communities have in the development of our communities. The contribution from Indigenous communities ensure the sharing of unique perspectives and traditional knowledge. The township recognizes the importance of consulting with our Indigenous neighbors and communities in an effort to build constructive, cooperative relationships through meaningful engagement to inform our decision-making and build partnerships. We acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect.
Thank you. Announcements. I don't have any. Closed sessions. We don't have. Public meetings. We do have a public meeting. I'd like the council adjourn its regular meeting at 6:02 in order to sit as a committee of adjustment under the Planning Act. Get someone to move that. Second it. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? And that's carried. I'm just going to go over how the proceedings are going to work. Members of public who wish to receive any further notifications of any applications being heard or considered today are asked to send an email to planning@lucanbiddulph.on.ca requesting further notification. Please be advised that comments expressed and any written material presented will become a matter of public record for full disclosure. If you have any questions after the meeting on any application being heard this evening, we ask that you direct those to the planner, Dan Fitzgerald. Members of public who wish to speak will be given a maximum of 10 minutes to address council and provide comments on the application. Please note that all questions and comments shall be directed to the chair of the meeting. In keeping with our procedural bylaw, the IR zone policy, I would remind all of our meeting participants to use respectful language and decorum throughout the meeting. The order of the proceedings for each of the planning applications in front of us will be as follows. First, I will ask the planner to explain the purpose of the application and hearing, present the staff report. Then the application or the agent will be given an opportunity to speak to their application. Then the public will be given an opportunity to ask questions or provide their comments. Please state your name and address so the comments can be reflected in the minutes. The municipal clerk will then note any additional comments received, circulated agencies and public not included in the planning report. The committee then may ask questions of the applicant and or staff. All questions and comments shall be directed through myself as the chair. I will ask for consideration of motions regarding the applications. The application before us tonight is one filed by Vane-Gill Building Company, Inc. for land situated on the south side of Clantyboy Drive in the hamlet of Clantyboy, municipally known as 5661 Clantyboy Drive. I'll pass it over to Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair and members of the committee. For those that don't know me, I'm Dan Fitzgerald, Manager of Planning with Middlesex County, and I'm providing professional planning services here tonight for the council and committee for Lucan Biddulph. So item 6.1 on the agenda this evening is a consent application. It is listed as B3, B4, and B5 2024. And as indicated, it's listed as lot 5661 Clantyboy Drive. So the purpose and effect of the application for these particular consents is to sever 3 lots from an existing parcel. Each new parcel would maintain a frontage of approximately 30 meters on Port Street in an area of approximately 1.38 acres. The retained lands would maintain a frontage on Clantyboy Drive through an existing access easement and an area of approximately 1 acre. So the effect of the proposal, again, is to permit the development of 3 single detached dwellings on the lands. The subject property is altogether about 5.17 acres. It is an existing residential lot and it is situated on the south side of Clantyboy Drive. It does maintain frontage as well on Port Street to the west. The lands abut an existing residential subdivision, again to the north and west, and existing agricultural lands to the east and south. The proposed retained land would contain an existing single detached dwelling, and the remainder of the lands would be vacant. It is designated hamlet in the township's official plan, and it's zoned hamlet residential in the township's comprehensive zoning bylaw. So generally, the provincial policy statement, county official plan, as well as the township's official plan, all support residential intensification within existing settlement areas. So in this particular case, Clandeboye is classified as a hamlet, and it is on partial services. As such, the official plan indicates that while growth is technically permitted, it is to be limited in scope to existing designated lands that are of an appropriate size to accommodate the residential uses. The proposed lots meet the official plan policy and are capable of meeting the existing zoning provisions related to the size as well as the frontage. In consultation with Public Works, it is noted that access to the North Middlesex water supply line coming through Port Street is available, while sanitary service would be provided through conventional septic beds on each individual property. No comments or concerns were provided during circulation from any internal or external agencies. I would note that I did receive 2 public comments, which answers were provided directly. As well, those public comments were provided to the committee in advance of the meeting this evening. I would generally say that the comments were related to concerns about the existing access to water within Clandeboye in general, and whether or not the existing water supply system would be sufficient to accommodate these lots. And the second being whether or not the proposal would constitute an underutilization of the lands, meaning whether or not it would be appropriate to have more residential lots within the area as opposed to just the 3 that are proposed here tonight. So what I would say is I have spoken with both Jeff Little, Public Works Manager, who have also had conversations with the fire chief with respect to the fire or the water comments. There was generally no concern related to the existing access to water within the areas, and the comments came back that it is operating as it should be at this particular point in time. North Middlesex also did not express any concerns and did say that they would be able to accommodate the 3 additional access service points to the main on Port Street. In terms of the lotting was proposed by the developer in this particular case. Planning staff do see a potential opportunity to increase lot size within this particular area. However, we do respect the fact that the existing official plan policy does seek to limit potential residential development in this particular area and does favor development of residential lots within our existing fully serviced urban areas. So with that said, in review of the application, I am satisfied that the proposal does meet the intent of the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, as well as the local official plan. And given the above, I am recommending approval of the 3 concurrent consent applications, subject to the conditions that have been outlined in the planner's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I will ask the applicant if they would like to speak to the application. If you could please just state your name, please, and company, and hit the red, hit the.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name's Matt Van Giel, and I live at 300 Elizabeth Street, and I am the applicant here tonight. So I just wanted to briefly comment on what Dan had spoken about with the underutilization of the property. So I do think I'd like to start off by saying intensification, I think, is great in areas where it is dictated, especially where full municipal services are available, being water and sanitary. And I think our provincial planning policy does a good job of indicating that they support that in those areas specifically. But I also feel it's important in areas, especially such as hamlets like Clandeboye, to maintain the character and the scale that exists within those areas. And while it is true that the lot area of 1.3 acres for each lot is larger than what is existing, I think it's important to note that lot area isn't necessarily what contributes to the character and scale of a subdivision. Rather, I would say lot width is what is much more important when looking at that. And in this particular instance, we propose lots that are 99 feet wide. And in comparison to the remainder of Clandeboye, the majority of lots are in excess of 100 feet in width. For instance, the court across from this property, all lots at the building envelope are in excess of 110 feet wide. And then beside this property, that lot is 150 feet wide. The one across from that is 120 feet wide, et cetera. And when you're walking on a street, what you see or driving on a street, what you see and what contributes to the character of a neighborhood is really how wide the lot is, because that's what limits what we can ultimately build as builders. So for that reason, we arrived at 3 lots here as being what we felt was appropriate. The other thing I would say is that septic systems are required for these lots. And, as I already said, lot areas in Clandeboye, yes, they are not as large as what these lots are being proposed, but the reality is that the restrictions and requirements around septic systems, which is ultimately stems from the OBC, has gotten much more stringent over the years, and septic beds have become larger. Not to mention we have requirements now such as contingency areas for beds and things like that. And I can speak from experience a little bit for the house that we constructed in the corner of Clandeboye Drive and Denfield Road. That home had a septic bed area, sand mantle that was 15 meters wide by 30 meters deep. So they're not small septic beds. And if we were to decrease the width of these lots closer to the minimums, which would be closer to 20 meters, it will become much more difficult to fit, a septic system, as I said, which can be 15 meters by 30 meters on a 20-meter wide lot. Not to mention that I need to have areas to direct stormwater around that bed. I can't have stormwater flowing over top of the mantle. So not only do I need my width of my bed, I also need areas to direct water around it appropriately. So for those reasons, like I said, we looked at this parcel and we really feel that 3 lots is appropriate. And if there are any more questions for myself, I'd be happy to answer, but that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Next I will look to the public for an opportunity to ask questions, provide their comments. I'd ask if anyone from the public does want to, if they raise their hands, so I know if anyone does want to comment. Okay, seeing none, thank you. Were you going to talk about, or Dan already did, about additional comments? Dan already commented on that, so that's fine. Now I'll look to the committee. Any comments of council, please, of the planner or the applicant? Does anybody have comments, questions?
I
Councilor Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. No, I had 2 questions. One was on the water one that and the one was on the acreage as well, and the size. But I'll be honest, I think the explanation I've received from the planner, I think I'm satisfied with that. Those were just concerns, but I know there are concerns from one of the residents was about the size and the character. So I'm understanding a little bit better about that size now. So I don't really have a concern right now. I'm just going to think about it for a minute though.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Hodgins?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you. I had similar comments about the size of the lots and whether they're an efficient use of the land, but similar to Councilor Regan, those were kind of answered by the comments of the planner. I did want to ask about the on the location map and on the sketch that was provided. There appears to be, I guess you'd call them unopened road allowances on either side of this parcel. It looks like it's called Thomas Street and Glendenning Street. And just through you to staff, I'm just questioning, is there any plans for those? Does this application have any effect on those unopened road allowances? Or can you just speak to those in general?
Yeah, so through the chair to committee member Hodgins. So what I would say is we did actually look into this quite extensively, just even looking at the overall lotting pattern in Clandeboye in general. If you zoom out to the larger extent, you'll see a lot of different road allowances and different lots that are within that particular area. What we found is there was a deeming bylaw passed to basically deem that subdivision null and void. However, I'm not sure that the township at that particular time followed up with deregistering the actual subdivision with the land registry's office. So as far as we can tell, the township does own a road right of way, certainly directly to the south of this particular property. This particular development would not impact that road right of way at all. It's likely more so a situation where that should be closed and tendered back to adjacent property owners. Just, and then it's, the other thing I would note is the existing hamlet boundary is actually at the boundary of this particular property. So the road allowance is outside of the hamlet area. It's within an agricultural area technically, so it really should formulate part of an existing agricultural land base.
Okay, thank you
Follow-up?
for that follow-up, if I may. Yes, thank you. Through you. Also, looking at the sketch, I'm just looking at this parcel to the east of the lands to be retained, and it looks like it doesn't have a municipal 911 number, but it's called Lot 18. And it's maybe related to the unopened road allowance question, but I guess, is there any impact from this application on that remnant parcel there? Or is that kind of an extension of address 5661? Thank you.
Yeah, so through the chair, what I would say is that particular parcel is outside of this particular landmass. It's very interesting how things evolved in this particular area in the past. So I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but it does technically front onto municipal road allowance, being the unopened road allowance that drops down behind this particular site. But in terms of development, this site would not impact that one.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my last question, if I may, is just,
Yes, go ahead.
is there any requirement with this application for fencing to be constructed where it abuts existing residential uses?
So through the chair, in terms of the actual consent application, no, there's no requirement to establish fencing.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing that I do have a motion in front of me, I'll read. That the application for consent B3 2024, B4 2024, and B5 2024 filed by Matt Van Giel on behalf of Joseph Hayter to sever 3 lots having a frontage of approximately 30.24 meters on Port Street and areas of approximately 1.3 acres and the retained an area of approximately 1 acre with frontage maintained through an existing easement from a property legally described as part of Lot 14, Lot 18, and Lot 35, Range 2, Plan 178, in the Township of Lucan Biddulph be granted, subject to the following conditions. And the conditions are listed there 1 through 11, so they can be reviewed by public or anybody. So if I get someone to move that, second it, moved by Councilor Reagan, seconded by Councilor Hodgins, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you. The next application before us tonight is one filed by Jamie Robertson of SBM Limited for land situated on the northeast corner of Chestnut and Butler Street in the village of Lucan, municipally known as 252 Butler Street. I'll pass it over to Dan.
Yeah, so through the chair to members of the committee. So item 6.2 on the agenda tonight is an application for consent being B6, B7, B8, and B9 2024. And municipally known as 252 Butler Street. So the purpose and effect of this particular application is a consent to sever an existing parcel into 4 new lots. So 3 of the new parcels would maintain a frontage of approximately 16 meters along Chestnut Street and an area of 489 square meters. The retained parcel, that being on the image that you can see here, the yellow parcel, would have a frontage of approximately 18.3 meters on Chestnut and an area of 558.6 square meters. So the effect of the proposal is permit the development of 4 semi-detached dwellings for a total of 8 new dwelling units on 4 separate lots. So the subject property is approximately 0.5 acres in area. It is a residential parcel and it's situated in the northeast corner of the intersection at Chestnut and Butler Street in the village of Lucan. The lands are surrounded by single detached dwellings on all sides, and I would note that it was previously home to a bowling alley. It is within the urban settlement area of Lucan. It's designated residential according to the township official plan. And it's zoned residential second density or R2 zone in the comprehensive zoning bylaw. So I would note municipal services do exist on Butler Street as well as Chestnut and are available for future hookup at the property line. Generally speaking, I would say the provincial policy statement, county's official plan, and as well as the township's official plan all support residential intensification within our existing settlement areas. It is noted that it creates a more efficient format for development and limits the requirements to expand our settlement boundaries into our agricultural areas. This is generally the preferred form of development. So in this particular case, the proposed lot sizing does meet the requirements of the residential second density zone. And the use as proposed, that being semi-detached dwellings, is permitted in the existing zoning. It represents a good opportunity for residential infill and intensification on a current underutilized parcel. Additionally, full municipal services exist at the property line to support the proposed development. So this application was circulated to both internal and external agencies and staff in accordance with our Planning Act requirements. Comments that were received have been incorporated into our conditions of consent recommended in the planning report. I also note that I did receive 1 public comment during circulation, which was provided to committee in advance of tonight's meeting. The comment particularly was related to whether or not fencing would be erected as part of the development against the existing abutting residential lands. So in review of this particular application, I am satisfied that the proposal meets the intent of the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, as well as our local official plan. So as such, I am recommending approval of consent application B6 through B9, 2024. Again, subject to the conditions that have been outlined in the planning report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I will ask if the applicant or agent would like to have this opportunity to speak to the application. Okay, if you just say anything, you just state your name and address and name.
Thank you very much through you, Chair. My name is Jamie Robertson from SBM. I'm the agent on this file and will be representing the client, Hull's Custom Homes, who are also in attendance here this evening, should anything be required from either of us. Number one, I would like to thank staff for their work on this application, this file. As you heard, it is a consent to create 4 new lots, 1 retained from the parcel and 3 brand new, all for semi-detached unit dwellings, 4 individual dwellings to be built, a total of 8 units altogether. We thank the staff recommendation and we hope that you will follow along with it. However, we do have a request regarding one of the conditions that are before you this evening. Condition number 2 currently is listed out as requiring a development agreement be in place for this development and registered on title. We would ask that that not be required, as site plan consultation process is no longer required for dwelling or residential developments under 10 units. And as such, there isn't really a legal authority to require the development agreement in this instance. The intent of that provincial policy was to reduce red tape for a lot of the smaller residential developments being proposed. And that particular condition would add a bit of red tape on this application, this process. However, we understand that the township would like some assurance in the development, and we would actually propose to reword condition number 2. We don't want to eliminate it entirely. So the proposed wording that we would like to use in that condition number 2 would be as follows: that the applicant submit servicing and grading plans prepared by a qualified engineer to the satisfaction of the township. And then it would also be prior to the issuance of the consent certificate. And therefore there is still some assurance for the township that the development can proceed as required. As part of our initial application, we have prepared a preliminary grading plan that shows that stormwater would not affect the subject areas around us, the abutting lands. And we have provided locations of the proposed accesses as also identified in the conditions. Beyond that, thank you. I would be available to answer any questions to the best of my ability. And thank you for your time here this evening.
Thank you for that. I think the additional comments, if there was, it was already noted. There wasn't any. All right, I am now gonna, none received. Questions, I'll go to the public. Now the public, would anyone from the public like to speak to this application? Seeing, okay. You could state your name and address and.
Christopher Richardson, 181 Chestnut Street. For as far as I can see, I don't really have a lot to say, but as far as I can see, you seem to have an awful lot of people in a very, very small area. You're putting 8 units on a very small lot. It may not be very small in Toronto, but it is here, right? But the point is, you could have a potential 32 people living there. I have a septic system at the front of my house. If there's any overspill with the water and all that, that's going to contaminate that. And I don't like that. As regarding anybody else, I don't know, but I think it's going to look out of place. You have bungalows and you have side splits and back splits. That's it. You don't have tall houses anywhere around. So when you plonk all those 8 units right in there, it's going to just jump right out at you. So I don't think anybody's considered thinking about what people live around there and have lived around there for 50 and 60 years. This is my argument. Why don't people say, well, that doesn't fit there? Why should we put it there? But the people don't care. Let's just shove it in. We're going to build houses. So that's what I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. So you've got a little piece of land there. We can shove it there. And we'll make more money out of it. So basically, that's all I want to say, and I just totally disagree with that amount of house. I'm not disagreeing on houses, period, but just that amount of units is an awful lot on a small street too. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Thank you. Anything further from anybody? Okay. Seeing none, I'll look to. Oh, Harry. Oh, okay, Harry's. Oh, okay. You want to, Harry, you still got to state your name, even though we all know
Harry
you.
Race, the neighbor across the road. I'm very sorry, I don't feel very well. The
You all right? Here, sit yourself down here. There you go.
the only concern I have myself, I think it's a great thing really, but I just want to know where the frontage from the front and the frontage of the back, what's the lot size in between? Does anybody get that or not? I'm asking.
Dan, did you want to comment on how that comes about, or is it too early in the stages to answer that question?
No, through the chair, I can certainly do that. So the proposed severance sketch here that we have shows a lot depth of 30 meters. So it's essentially close to 100 feet.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
So the proposed depth is close to 100 feet of the lots.
Yeah, but I'm saying when they're built, the frontage to the property line in the back, from the back to the
Oh, sure.
property line.
Yeah.
Is it pretty well the same or one better than the other?
So the rear of the proposed unit would be set back 10 meters from
10
the rear,
meters,
so
that's about
30 feet.
30 feet, and what about the front, Dan?
From the front to the road,
Yeah,
6 meters.
6 meters.
Yeah.
The
So
only
about,
thing I don't like is the parking in front. And can 2 cars go in these places?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So in this particular case, the applicant is proposing one stall in the driveway and then another stall in a garage that's attached to the front of the dwelling.
I would like to have that frontage reversed. Not too much, you follow me?
Set back further.
I like that, and better have cars laying all around the front. And there's bikes laying around, garbage cans laying around, don't look very nice here and there.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't explain myself.
Nope.
You're explaining yourself fine. No, understood. Yep, you'd like it reversed? No,
Oh,
yep,
I-
yeah,
I
that's
like
your
the
comment.
box, but
Yep.
I've got no problem with the
Okay,
buildings going there whatsoever, but we know some's gonna go there.
Okay.
We have a nice neighborhood and we've gotta give people a chance to live.
well, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further from the public for comments? Seeing none. I will now look to the committee for questions. Councillor Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thanks for the report, Dan. I just have a couple of questions. I think the gentleman that was representing the Jamie, right? So my question, I guess would be for Dan, would be for Jamie too, is that when I'm listening to your proposal for this, for point 2, and I listened to it, I'm not sure what's different. Like, I'm not sure what you're asking for different, like between the two, like we're asking for this is sort of a standard, number 2, sort of a standard request that we have. And then I'm hearing now that there's no legal, like there's no legal backing for that now. And then we have your suggestion. So I'm not clear, maybe to explain to me what's different in your suggestion as opposed to what we want. I don't know who wants to answer that, but I'm just not clear on that.
Yeah, I'll let the applicant speak to it because
Sorry.
he's, yeah, you're the one that would like to change it, so you can maybe.
Perfect. Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. So the wording in the existing condition as proposed requires that a development agreement be agreed to and placed on title for the lands.
Right.
Our proposal would eliminate that specific portion of the condition so that we wouldn't have to register a development agreement on title. Generally, a development agreement is part of the site plan process. And as per the Bill 24 changes, that obviously has changed now. And developments under 10 residential units don't require the site plan process and then therefore don't have a development agreement requirement. So the current policy and current planning act doesn't have a legal requirement for that through the consent process. I do know that townships and municipalities are starting to try and add for some of that assurance in other places, but there's just, our understanding right now is that there is no legal requirement to it. So we are asking that that specific portion be taken off of the condition.
All right.
Thank you.
May I
Anything
follow
further?
up, Mr.
Yep,
Deputy
go
Mayor?
ahead.
So I guess my question now is for Ron. What position does that put us in? Is that, because I want to make sure
Question
that,
for Dan.
can you redirect it? Okay, sorry,
Dan.
Dan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so through the chair, what I would say is I don't disagree with Jamie's point with respect to the act doesn't say you have to do this. But I would also say it also doesn't say you can't do it. So to Mr. Robertson's point, certainly through the changes through Bill 109, through the delegation of site plan approval authority and limitations to 10 or less units, this would not go through that process. So there's a bit of nomenclature there that I think is being confused. In that particular case, that would be a site plan agreement that would apply to the lands. This is a development agreement. Site plan agreements are not dischargeable from title, development agreements are. So once you've met the requirements of that particular development agreement, it can then be discharged from title. So it just provides the municipality with a bit of guarantees as to what is actually installed on the property for, say, if there's stormwater management controls that need to be incorporated, if there's something like a low impact development lid design to help control stormwater flow. It's kind of that hammer that the municipality still holds at the end of the day to ensure that that type of infrastructure gets installed. So that's the only note that I would give to council in that particular aspect.
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
So Mr. Deputy Mayor, I just want to make sure that if we're agreeing to that, we're not putting ourselves at any kind of risk. Again, I'm not sure how everybody else is feeling about it. But I guess my question now is that if we accept that amendment to that, are we putting ourselves at any risk?
First, we'd have to have someone first and second
Yes.
that to a friendly amendment. So maybe what we'll do is if,
No, I'm not suggesting, I'm just.
no, understood, but I think what we'll do is whether we're going to go back to questions, and if someone asks for a friendly amendment, we can get someone to second it for further discussion. If someone wants to do a friendly amendment, I'll just wait and see on that. For now, I'm going to ask for further questions.
All right.
Okay. Any further questions on the, oh, sorry, you got another question?
I have another further question. Just to, as a question I was going to come up with Harry's point with the site plan or the picture. I'm just going to try to find the picture again. Sorry, the one that has the, oh, it's on the screen. Yeah, my concern is that same thing, is that if you've got potentially 12 more vehicles right at an intersection, and I know that's 6 meters, what's 18, 19 feet, right? So I understand that then you're going to have like potentially 12 more cars. That was a concern, because I like that point, because I was going to bring that up, because I'm looking at that and I'm just thinking that's right at an intersection. It's pretty congested. I don't know what we can do about that. It's just a concern I wanted to raise. Just because it is a higher density. It's not just one driveway or two driveways, it's 8 driveways and potentially, 16 cars. So it was just a concern I had about that. I don't know how many you can park in there. And I know that there are some concerns with some residents that have been built where people can't park their cars in their driveways, especially if they have a full-size truck or something. And I've seen that and I've heard that. So that's my concern too, because if you've got somebody that's got 2 trucks that lives in one of those units, and then, half the trucks on the sidewalk, and we got kids and people, trying to walk on them. So I was just concerned about that a little bit, plus the fact that it's right at that intersection as well. Just to comment, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I don't think we need any further. You're not looking for further clarity comment. Okay.
No, thank you.
Any other further questions? Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Through you, I got a couple questions. I'll start with the parking because we're talking about that now. Further to Mr. Wraith's comment or about the parking concerns, the question I had with those driveways, the driveway obviously extends beyond the property line. So there's 6 meters of parking there between the property line and the garage. And then another parking space can be provided within the garage. My question is are vehicles permitted to park between the property line and the road, which is technically municipal property, to double stack their parking?
So through the chair, my comment to that would be that's the existing condition everywhere in Lucan, just so you're aware. So everyone's property line in most residential subdivisions, the house is set back 6 meters, and then they double stack into the municipal road right of way. So this would be no different. It is a different scenario that was alluded to for other developments that we have, where those are on private roads. The actual physical driveway is only 6 meters. In this case, the driveway would be more likely 12 meters in depth. So they would have, although 6 meters is contained within their actual property, there is a municipal boulevard portion that's in the municipal right of way that is a driveway still that extends out to the road. So in reality, you could still stack 2 cars within that driveway very comfortably, which is much different than a vacant land condo situation where it's private roads.
Yeah, because there is no sidewalk there, I don't believe anyways. So there is, I know there's no sidewalk there. So there's no sidewalk there. So then I see exactly what you're saying. So you do have the ability to park 2 cars there. And I guess the only other, sorry, Councillor Hodgins.
Yeah, no, thanks for that clarification. I guess maybe that would come down to how it's specified in our parking bylaw, but thanks for making the point that is the way it is in most parts of Lucan currently. The second question I had about parking is, this is Chestnut's a busier road. And I'm not sure what the restrictions are currently there for on-street parking, but just with the density of this development, that is something that we might start seeing here is on-street parking. And perhaps this is to staff or to the manager of public works. Have we contemplated on-street parking and how this development may impact on-street parking conditions currently, and whether we need to modify that due to this development?
Yeah, and through the deputy mayor. So that would be something that we could look into. But generally, this street is not a collector. It's not a feeder in the definition that we have right now. Having said that, if there was an issue that were to arise, we could look at some no parking areas there. At the same time, Gilmore, which is an example, Gilmore, Spencer, which would have higher traffic counts. We certainly don't have any issues with cars parking there. It actually slows and traffic calming, slows the traffic down and actually promotes safer driving habits with some cars parking on the street. It's a wide street. It's not a narrow street, and it's a straight street. So yeah, at this point, we don't see an issue. If it were to arise in the future, we certainly could address it.
Okay, thank you. I got a couple more questions. All right, keep proceeding. Thank you. My next question is about compatibility with the character of the existing neighborhood, and how the municipality can ensure that there's an appropriate aesthetic to this build, so it's it fits in with the existing neighborhood and doesn't create an eyesore or anything. So through you to Dan, can you comment on how the compatibility would be addressed?
Yeah, so through the chair to member Hodgins. So what I would say is province took away our ability to be able to review urban design and design characteristics of the actual look and feel of development. So we're effectively just left with what our zoning bylaw standards would be to control development and how it proceeds. So in this particular case, they would just be subject to the R2 zoning provisions in terms of setbacks, both in interior property lines, exterior property lines, front and rear. But the actual physical look of the building, that's unfortunately not something that we would be able to control, if that's what you meant.
Okay, and follow up through you, Chair. Maybe I would put that to to Mr. Robertson or the owner. Do you have any comments on how you would maintain compatibility with the neighborhood and the aesthetic?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. The current proposal is that they would all be 2-story semi-detached residential units. So generally speaking, lower residential that exists in the area is all that 1-story bungalow, split level type developments. The 2-story still fits into that context. It's still a lower residential built form with a little bit more density by having the semi portion of it. So a lot of times semi-detached units do look very similar to existing single development or single unit developments, single detached developments. But they have that second door. So they still fit within the context. All of the sites still meet the lot requirements. So the lot frontages are still your general 15 meter. We're a little bit less for the frontages. So it's still built with the lower intensity design in mind and to look more like single detached units, but putting in the second unit right attached to it. And we're not looking to provide 3-4 story getting into a higher dense or townhouses where you end up with that long straight street frontage of one large building that also wouldn't really fit into that single detached neighboring context. So the idea of the semis is to get a little bit more density, but still meet kind of that boundary between going a little bit higher density, but looking at the lower density character.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Just say, I think this is a, it's a good infill and intensification project, and it fits our policies, and it's good use of the land. So I'm supportive of the recommendation as currently drafted.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reagan.
I just had one more, another question, if I could, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you. There was a letter, I think, that you mentioned, from a resident, I think 244, Butler, talking about fencing. And I just for point of clarification, so I'm looking at the map. So just on the east side of that property, there's a stand of bushes or trees or shrubs or whatever and the request was, and again, just for point of clarification, is it incumbent upon the developer, because the resident was asking for, because it looks like it's right on the property line there, is it incumbent upon the developer to put up fencing there to separate those two properties? Just a friendly neighbor kind of thing. So I'm not sure if, I think we spoke about this earlier, but again, he's just asking, making that request. I don't know if a resident can make that request. I guess they can, or whether the developer would have to follow through on that. So I just want to get your comments on that, if I could. Chair.
Yeah. Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Reagan, it is an interesting question. Certainly in the past, that would be something that we would seek through residential infill, likely as a condition of a site plan approval. In this particular case, obviously we wouldn't be going through that site plan approval process. So me specifically, I'm actually not aware of a way to make that requirement. If maybe it's a situation where for in the future, you could consider updating your building bylaw, which would require some type of fencing between infill development and existing residential developments. I'm not sure if there's anything in there to date at this particular point in time, but committee could always request the addition of a condition noting fencing requirements. The only thing I would say is, if that is the case, that's something that they would have to do upfront before they develop to clear the actual consent. So it would be up to committee if they so desired, they could potentially add a condition that says that a fence be erected between the existing abutting residential properties.
Right. Okay. No,
Sorry.
thank you. That's fine. Thank you. All right. Thanks.
Anything further? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, I more comment than anything. And for the public and for everyone, I mean, we're aware of it. I mean, the province has added some new rules, regulations and conditions for building, and we are required to follow them. And it may not be something that we as a community building committee might like, but it's something we have to adhere to. So I want the public to understand that, our hands are tied to a certain degree, and our level of input has been restricted. So
Thank you. Anything further? Well, if I've got nothing else to add, or I'd be repeating what's been said, so I'm not going to bore you with that. I guess the applicant has asked for an amendment to number 2. If there's somebody that wants to make that friendly amendment, I will look to them. If not, I've got a recommended motion. I'm just going to proceed to read it. Okay, the recommended motion in front of me is the application for consent B6 2024, B7 2024, and B8 2024, and B9 2024, filed by Jamie Robertson on behalf of Hall's Custom Homes to sever 3 lots, each having a frontage of approximately 16 meters along Chestnut and areas approximately 489 square meters, and the retained frontage of approximately 18.3 meters and an area of 558.6 square meters from property legally described as lot 141, plan 340 in the township of Lucan Biddulph be granted with the following conditions that are in front of us from 1 to 9. If I get someone to move that, second it. If we could get someone to move it and second, and then I'll ask for questions. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. Questions?
My apologies, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if I may.
Yep.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask about was maybe to Dan, is it says you want to sever 3 lots and the picture has 4. And I'm just wondering if I could just get clarification on that.
Yes, through the chair to committee members. So in the particular case of a severance, there's always one retained parcel, and then there's the new severed lots. So in this particular case, you'd only be severing 3 new lots, and one of the parcels is a retained parcel. So that's why the recommendation of verbiage is that 3 new lots get created, as the existing lot is still there.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to be out of line. Thank you.
That's fine, but you weren't. That's why
Okay,
we
thank you.
continued.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the vote? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Okay, now I ask that the committee does now rise and move into public meeting at 6:50 under Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended. Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Reagan. All in favor? That's carried. We're on to we're on to 6.3 PL-08-2024 31 Old Clover Drive. Cloverfield Apartments for removing the holding symbol. I'll pass it over to Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor and members of council. So item 6.3 on the agenda tonight is an application for a holding symbol removal for a property that's located at 31 Old Clover Drive in the village of Lucan. So as a minor zoning bylaw amendment, the application to remove holding is generally an administrative process. It's basically a check to ensure that the development has met the conditions that were placed on it originally through the original zoning bylaw amendment prior to any development occurring. As council may be aware, in this particular case, this application was approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal. And as a condition of zoning, a holding symbol was added, which requires the applicant to enter into an agreement with the township to ensure orderly development of the parcel. The applicant has now entered into an agreement, which has been executed by way of a delegated authority. And the agreement was secured against and registered on the property title. So as the requirements for lifting holding have been met, I am recommending council approve zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 2/2024. And if you have any questions, I'm certainly available to answer. Thank you.
Okay, typically I don't ask if there's any question, but Michelle is on online there. Michelle, did you have anything further to add to what was said?
Hi,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I think I just lost connection. I can't see anything. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I don't have anything to add. Thank you for the staff for helping us work towards this completion of this project and to the commencement of construction. So we're excited to get things going. And I have nothing further to add. We're satisfied with the report presented by staff.
Okay, thank you. I've got a recommended motion that the request to remove the holding H symbol by Cloverfield Apartment Inc. for the proposed 57 unit 4-story apartment building be approved and that the implementing bylaw be brought forward for consideration. So move that and second it. Moved by Councillor Hodgson, seconded by Councillor Reagan. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Delegations, they've been waiting patiently. Oh, no, I got something else here. I got something else. That council adjourn the public meeting at 6:55 and recognize it's in regular meeting. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Now, they've been waiting very patiently. We have a delegation in the Middlesex counties here, Bill Rayburn, CAO, and Ina DeVete, the warden. So welcome. Appreciate you coming and listening to our initial planning. So.
Planning's always interesting.
Yes, yes.
Time goes quickly.
Yes.
I just want to say thank you very much for giving us time on your agenda tonight to give a brief overview of what's been happening at the county. A little more, sorry about that. Yep. we're all aware of all the changes that have been going on with respect to demographics and growth, and you're dealing with it tonight here too. So we want to make sure that we can outline what we're doing at the county and how that all fits in together and how we're supporting you. And I'm going to turn over to our CAO, Bill Rayburn, who's going to lead the way.
So we started I'll head right into the budgeting slide and I'll give you a pretty good overview, I think, of just some of the things we're working on for this year. But the budget this year started a little earlier than normal, and we got our number out a little earlier, and we're going to continue to try and get that number out earlier and earlier for lower tier municipalities. But it was a long process. We took a deep dive into a number of areas we haven't taken a dive into before at this level. And we also did a lot of work trying to understand just how much Middlesex County is changing. And it's changing a lot. A lot of what you dealt with just in the last half hour is a significant part of what we were dealing with whenever it comes to services. If you think about what the county does in terms of delivery of services, it's human services primarily with a little bit of transportation thrown in, but almost everything's human services. And demographically, we have census data to tell us what's happening. We have some of the best data we get is actually from the health sector with, who's going into ambulances and who's going to hospitals. But we also have the anecdotal of what's happening here. And clearly in Middlesex County, we're growing every piece of data you look at says we're growing very quickly and the service demand is rising fast. Why is that? Because we're growing kind of at the polar extremes. Middlesex County used to be very homogeneous in age, and we're seeing that the folks that are coming to our community now are at the polar extremes. Either in Lucan, you were for many years very fast growing for the small families, young small families, and then also, we're seeing at the other end of the age spectrum, a big demographic of people that want to buy. We saw both examples here today. People that want to buy their 1.5 acre lot, dream house, and sell their one in Toronto. We're seeing that group move. And then we're seeing the semi-detached crowd, the younger population coming as well. And that's where our service demands are. So you've got libraries, you've got for both sides of that spectrum. You've got ambulances for both sides of that spectrum, nursing homes, almost every social services, social housing. That demographic uses a lot of services. And that's what Middlesex County is right now. And it's changed almost overnight. It feels like it happened overnight, and it probably feels like that to you too. But in the last 4 to 5 years, it's just really shifted things. And so we had to have a really good look at our budget and how we do things. I thought the result was amazing. The budget committee did great work to get it down to 2.93, but we're doing a lot of other things as well. There's some things we have to do in terms of how we address what's coming. And so we had to look at infrastructure and look at development charges and what that might look like, because there's so much growth happening here that growth has to pay for growth. We can't have that on the general tax base. And so development charges are something that we're proposing to county council just for transportation, not for a whole host of things like you could imagine, but that's something that you're going to see. We also had to take a really good look at our assessment mix. I hate our assessment mix. It's horrible. And there's just not enough industrial and not enough commercial. This is very much a residential county and an agricultural county. And when you look at that mix, it's just not sustainable as a mix. And so we've talked to council about investing. There's lots of reports that we're printing now about just the impact of that overweighting of residential and agriculture on our assessment mix. But an economic development corporation is certainly something we see in our future to help with the growth of industrial and commercial assessment. And the same thing with the county loan program. If you look at that program, it started right after the annexation, the big annexation that happened in Middlesex County. And what did it do? It was really designed to try and replace residential assessment loss. And we did a great job of it. We got way more people coming than we probably can handle now because of all the infrastructure challenges that we have. But the county loan program, we're looking at repositioning it to focus less on residential, which we have no trouble doing, and more into industrial assessment. So that's something else that we're trying to change as well in the coming year. There's a lot of things in here that are just budget highlights as well. So the foreign direct investment stuff that's happening in economic development. We can talk about all of these in greater detail if you like. You can take a look at the investors toolkit that's out there. A lot of investments, and especially in communities like this, we recognized early on, just in communities like this and Strathroy and some of North Middlesex and some of the municipalities of that size where we have a lot of young families early on, and childcare is something that we've really been investing hard in through our libraries. And so that's something that we're working on. And every community is going through this homeless prevention, housing requirements, affordability requirements. We really have to do more, not only in industrial assessment, but in multi-res. This block is like fantastic. I was saying to Ina sitting here, Dan and I were talking a little bit. I went and looked around just this block, and this is my Valhalla in terms of what I want to see in the county is multi-residential units that are affordable, and we need way more of those. That's what we need if we're going to attract the next generation of worker into the community so that we can support that industrial and commercial growth. Of course, you look around anywhere here and you're going to see signs for Middlesex County Connect, our transit program that is also very important to industrial and commercial growth and also to residential. And our vulnerable population really needs that to get to school, to get to work, to get to appointments. And so this is something we're really trying to build a series of routes for, and putting a lot of energy into this because we see this as part of being a great community. I said to Ina last night at one of the presentations, Dirk must have got a hold of Paul because there's a lot of planning and development highlights in here. And he talks a lot of, basically he talks about this all the time. We're growing super fast. We're hiring more planners the best we can. But if you look at the size of the growth, there's communities here that have planning applications to double. And that was just unheard of. It was only 8 years ago that I'm sitting in rooms with municipalities talking about resident attraction workshops. Like, that's not that long ago. And now we have whole municipalities not that far from here, even here, where you can say, hey, there's that many planning applications that are out there that we're going to double in size. And that's just, no one would have predicted that. We were just fighting to keep schools in place, fighting to keep banks in place, fighting to keep doctors in place. And we still are on most of those, but the population just wasn't there to support it. And now you're seeing that growth just exponential. So we have to do the work to support that, and the county's doing its very best to keep up with that. Another area we're seeing tremendous growth is in MLPS and the ambulance service. A couple of different areas. I already told you about the demographics. The typical ambulance call, when I've been doing responsible for land ambulance, I think for like 26 years or something. Back then it was Johnny hurt his arm at the baseball game. That was the calls we're getting. That's not the calls we're getting. Now, demographically, we're getting all these folks, and I talked about hospital stats. You would not believe the stats we're seeing about the change in demographic that are going to University Hospital. And that's you guys, that's the people that are from this north end. The age group is rising pretty quickly for those stats. And that's our sweet spot for ambulance calls that's happening. But so we're seeing call volume just go through the roof. It's the hockey stick pattern. Offload delays continue to be a problem at the hospital because they're overwhelmed and have their own challenges systemically. But the other thing I just point out is that we're doing a lot of work on very complex cases. I talked about Johnny that hurt his arm. Now we're dealing with significant mental health challenges that we're dealing with throughout the entire region. So, we do London and Middlesex with ambulance, and those challenges are significant. And then, of course, we have the drug challenges as well, the addiction challenges, and a call that an ambulance might think is, when they go out to it, is going to be 15 minutes, sort of do their thing, bring them to hospital, can turn into 5 hours. And that's the reality of the situation. And that has a huge impact on the cost of land ambulance with these significant challenges that are out there in the community. I also like to mention at some point the rise of community paramedicine. This is something that the province has invested a lot of money in. We were one of the first out of the gate. I think we were the first out of the gate with a pretty massive program. That's fantastic for communities of this size. It's fantastic for downtown London as well to help with some of the challenges that are there. But when you see emergency room closures and you see the changes that are happening with getting access to doctors, that preventative role of community paramedicine is vital. And every opportunity you get whenever you're talking to a provincial person, tell them how important community paramedicine is to this community because it's vital. And we've had a lot of new investments in that area. We're really ramping up what we're doing in community paramedicine. And I think you're going to see more of that as we go forward. Lindsay got a little spike in there for the Tails and Trails program, which is very popular in this area. And then we had a slide to just talk about what's happening here in Lucan Biddulph. Of course, the update approved in 2023. And then has Bailey been out here to talk about IT services yet? Tonight?
He won't be here, but it's on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Okay. So yeah, we've been bumping into him at all of our stops. And so that's just been a fantastic program. So we're really excited about that getting done. And then of course, I just was over to take a look. I hadn't seen yet the emergency food cupboard, but I was over there to see that. What a great idea. And I'm really happy with the library team because they have done their very best to, and despite the fact it's a county system, they've done their very best to respond to local needs. And many of these things are local needs that have come forward. And then when we see something that works great, we replicate it in other parts of the county. So I think that's it for now, Dave. We'd be glad to answer any questions. Our email's there as well. And
Perfect. Well, no, thank you very much for all that information. Great information. I will look to my council for if they have any questions, that presentation. Councillor again.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, guys. I have a question though about sewage treatment, and you're talking about how much we're growing. And I think there's like 25 or so municipalities in Middlesex County. Like there's all of them are facing. It seems to me just historically that they built sewage treatment plants years ago, and they're all coming due at the same time. And I know any delegations that I've been, a few of them, we're always making the same point. Like, you know, you're asking us to grow. The province is asking us to grow. More and more people are coming to our communities in Middlesex County, and you know, and we need the facilities. And because you just mentioned about infrastructure and about services, and I'm just wondering. It almost seems to me like there should be this sort of concerted effort among all of us to sort of go at the province as one group. I don't know if that's something anyone ever thought of. You may be way ahead of the curve on me, but I'm just thinking individually, it doesn't seem we're making any headway. And I'm just wondering whether we should just show up all together. So not literally, but thank you.
The
Thanks.
natives are restless. Sorry,
Diana?
I'm not making fun of it. This is a problem that's being felt. Yeah, no, but it's a really good point. It's all good and well to build houses, but if your kids have to be on a bus 2 hours to get to school from those houses, or if you haven't got parks, if the hospitals haven't got emergency rooms, or in rural areas, if you haven't got doctors to handle the population, that's a problem. It's a problem for our residents in the communities, and it makes service delivery hard or planned service delivery, like the ambulance service at the county. So this is not exclusive to Middlesex County. Up north, they're struggling with distances and getting doctors to come just like we are here. In big cities, they're struggling to get access to schools. You put up in Toronto last week when I was there, one of the stories that came out was builders are now putting signs up on their 40 and 50-story apartment buildings that say basically, if you think your child is going to walk from school from here, we've got news for you. And I paraphrase, but not really a whole lot. It's a pretty blunt message for people. So the province has to take an integrated look at how services are going to be delivered, what monies are there for infrastructure, how they're going to be supporting communities that are growing. And I think you're doing the right thing. You just have to lay it out for the person that you're going to be delegating to. The county's delegating as well, and MOU meetings are happening with AMO regularly now with the province. So I think the message is getting through, but I think it may take a while before that dollar bill starts rolling downhill to us out here in the sticks that need the money too. It's not a great answer, I know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further?
well, just that Ina's right. It is happening all over the province. The problem is we got run over first. And we're going to continue to get run over residentially. People say, Bill, why are you so excited about multi-res? Why are you so excited about industrial? Just the demand on service is a lot less. The assessment is a lot higher. It's or the tax ratios are a lot higher. You need that. You need that balance in your portfolio, and we just can't continue to get run over residentially. The infrastructure isn't there, not just hard infrastructure. The soft infrastructure that I was talking about, we're going to get run over pretty quickly if we aren't already. And so that's the challenge. But yes, there are lots of lobbying efforts going forward. We're doing a lot of work in that area because we're at the forefront of it, I think, in this county. And especially because we're not a large urban center where you kind of, large urban centers kind of expect that kind of growth year over year. We were trucking along at like just base level growth and being pretty happy with 1.6. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, the floodgates open. Much harder for us to react than it is for some of the large urbans.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Deputy
you.
Mayor. I'm good.
I'd like to, sorry, you're pointed, you're.
The only
That's,
thing I wanted to mention was you saw how much money came from various sources to the rural, on like how many out of the counties in the in Western Ontario wardens, nobody got money for like the money is flowing, but not necessarily. I think we have to raise a flag and kind of, hello, we're here. We need some help too.
oh yeah.
So I say, don't stop talking to your representatives. Don't stop delegating. Say, we got to work together. But yeah, the cities are in the same bind. Everybody is, but I don't see the money flowing equally per capita or per acre or per anything.
Thank you. And Councillor Hodgins?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, Bill, Ina, thank you for coming down to Lucan Biddulph and the presentation and the information. With respect to the budget, I think it's great that you guys got it down to the 2.93, just with, cost of living pressures and everything this year. And I think I saw like the first iteration of that budget, it was like a really high number. It was, I think it was north of 20% maybe. So I'm just wondering how it came in so high and then how we got it down to where the county did ultimately land with 2.93.
Well, a lot of meetings. There's no question about that. A lot of back and forth, a lot of debate. But I would say you're asking more of a general broad question as opposed to the specifics of it, I think. And generally what we did is we've had a philosophy of a couple of things. Paying for things in real time at the county for a long period of time, and we've been able to afford to. Like, someone's going to have to show me a county that's in better fiscal shape than the county of Middlesex for the last 25 years. I don't know one where we've had almost virtually no debt, tax rates that are the envy of just about every county in southwestern Ontario, and great reserves. Fantastic. That's allowed us to, we've had a lot of fiscal conservatives. There's a lot of them on the wall over here that have been around at county council, some that aren't even on the wall. But people that are very fiscally conservative is how we've approached things. And that meant we paid things in real time. So for example, you might look at something like the 4-laning of Glendon Drive and the roundabout. There's a really good example actually, where we debated that particular project and we thought about it. And normally what that would be is that you talked about that number, that was on the whole budget. That whole thing was there, or this year's portion of that was all there. And we started thinking about it and said, no, we need a new strategy because we're growing so fast. We need a new strategy. And also I'm a big fan of general municipal economic theory, where you spread the depreciation of assets out over the long term as opposed to having it on this year's taxpayers. And so what we did is, as the budget committee, we shifted the whole philosophy, I think, generally. So now the many of the things that we might pay for immediately and pay for them one time are being spread out over a longer period of time. And then also you saw the development charges. That's also in there where growth is going to pay for growth. That's a good example of the Glendon project where that's all growth related, and that roundabout's all growth related. That shouldn't be on the tax base. That should be on development charges. So when you start looking at some of those big ticket items, because I would say, Ina, that the biggest ticket items that we had in this year's budget weren't necessarily ambulance the way they were the year before. And that's what happened, really. We got run over on ambulance with those costs of offload delays and call volume that we had a big spike the year before. This year's big ticket items were really around that road infrastructure and grow and responding to growth. And when you take that back out, amortize it out over a longer period of time as it should be, and then put in place an infrastructure plan that looks at how we deal with the next generation of 80-year bridges, that are coming due, then it all evens out, and then you start paying for things more incrementally across that time period. So that's the general philosophy that we use: growth, incremental cost, matching depreciation for every year's taxpayers. And when you started doing that, the number came lower. And then there was a couple surprises. So a big surprise was that we're responsible for social housing costs, and the actual dollars don't matter, but I mean the magnitude is, like in the millions of dollars. And you can imagine that if the people that are doing those social housing projects do not complete all those projects in a year, then you get a surplus. So we started looking at some of those surpluses that were coming back to us and saying, no, we just collected that. Again, municipal economic theory, we just collected that money for social housing projects that weren't completed. We should be using that surplus to help lower these costs in the next year's budget as soon as we can, because it's not going to be used for that. And so that all allowed us to lower costs, that combination of things. And I think that pretty well covers sort of how we got to where we were, along with a really, really deep dive into transportation generally and how we do everything in transportation, which is our largest levy impactor. Our largest budget number is ambulance, but our largest levy impactor is transportation.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one last question. I think around the horseshoe here, we're following that the county is building a new headquarters or office, and maybe similar to the sentiments expressed in North Middlesex with the location. If it's kind of being pulled away to a bit further from us, to the south part of London. And I wonder if you could just comment for us our council, how we got to it being where it is proposed to be located, where it is located, proposed to be located.
Perfect. Thanks for that opportunity. So I got to walk you back a little bit, Dave. This is, I gave this answer last night, and I was accused of it being a very fulsome answer, but I do have to walk you back to answer that question effectively. We take a very business-like approach to how we do just about, well, I want to say everything that we do, but in this one, we didn't look at politics. We looked at business first. And so what does that mean? We looked at every property that was out there that was serviced and ready to be built that met a certain criteria. And so council's criteria were visibility. It had to be sort of centrally located, and cost effective. And so when you look at all of those factors, you head mostly to Ina's municipality. There's not a lot of available, well, Dan knows, there's not a lot of commercially available land that's serviced, that's central, other than in one municipality when you look at our geography. And so when we looked at that, we went, whoa, that's also some pretty expensive land. So let's look at what our alternatives are. And that's great that it's expensive land in Middlesex Center. I think it's great.
It wasn't when they bought it.
It wasn't when they bought it, yeah. No, there you go. And so when you looked at that type of opportunity to do it in the county, you have to also remember that this isn't a service center. So what we've done over the last, I want to say 5 years, is I've had this a lot of work I put a lot of work into decentralizing. There's been people that before this council really wanted me to focus on getting the people that deliver the services closer to the people that they deliver, from the time they start work to the time they end, not after they drive out there. And so what that means is we redid Gainsborough Garage. There's a brand new facility out there that many of our folks use. And when I first started here, there was 150 people in the county building. Now, if you go in there on any given day, if you can count 15, I'll give you $1, because there's just not that many people there. All of our library head office got expanded in Strathroy, so now our library head office is out there. All of our social services people are all out into the libraries. All of our planning people are out here, except on Friday mornings and once a month. And so we've really turned the county building, and then I talked about Gainsborough, all our engineering teams out there. A lot of our people that do forestry or any of the other services are out there. And so this decentralization, pushing people closer to the people that they serve when they're a service function, has been an ongoing thing that we've invested a lot of money in, and we've really done a great job at it, to the point where there's a lot of empty parking spots at the county building. So that means the new county building isn't really a service center, it's a governance center. Very few people out there. And when you looked at that footprint, part of the great part of getting a footprint like that, we had a piece of property adjacent to the MLPS headquarters that we already owned. And when you looked at that, a two-story version of that smaller footprint. So basically the new county building is going to be the same size as the courthouse part without the jail. And when you looked at that, it fit perfectly on that site. We already owned it, so it was free. And we weren't taking any land out of production in the county, which is great. We don't pay taxes anyway, so we weren't, we're not paying someone else like London or not paying someone in a local municipality. And then finally, for me, we took the politics all out of it. So other than of where it was going to be. So other than the fact that this municipality is further from it, which Kathy reminds me of every time we have an MLPS meeting out there. It is very central. It is very easy to see because it's right on the 400 series highways. There's plenty of people in the county that have never seen the county building in person, because a lot of people don't go to downtown London, but almost everybody goes down that 400 series highway at some point in their year. And it's very quick for most people to get to because of that 400 series. We did the traffic analysis, and as soon as you enter into downtown and even increasingly in the Middlesex Center, you're going to have some challenges in terms of the time that it's going to take from any of the locations we're looking at. You add all that up, and it was the perfect solution, because now we just have the cost of the building, and it's really supported our decentralization plans. So that's our explanation, and we'll see how it turns out.
Thank you for that. And then is there further
No.
follow-up?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Anna.
That was fulsome.
You took a step back, Bill. Two, I think. Any further questions of council? I've got, Ron, did you want to make a comment or?
If I may, I just wanted to thank the county.
Yep.
I think, two services come to mind, planning and IT. Those two services have paid off in spades as far as I'm concerned. I think we get better service at less cost than what we were paying consultants before. So I'm very appreciative of those types of services that the county has sort of taken under its wing and provided service to all the lower tiers. I think that's been a great program, and I just want to say thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
And I thank you, Ron. My comment is just, if you could briefly comment on my comment, I guess. Our biggest loan coming up forward will be the sewer plant expansion. And depending on funding, depending on whether we proceed to go forward or not, whether we can, you briefly skipped over loans and how they worked with the county. Like, what would you say to Lucan Biddulph right now? Your thoughts on incentivized loan, not like an interest paying, there was stuff you've done in the past, because you kind of pivoted that. Maybe I didn't quite understand you going from residential to industrial, and the loans are changing that up a bit. So if you could comment on our needs that we all know is coming forward.
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you. So we'll actually show you. So we haven't got all of these things are a look ahead. So we really haven't got approval from council for these things. What we're doing is sort of giving you a peek at the things we're talking about, but we'll also show you the report that we're working on. There's really great news on the loan program and the county building, because we're building a new building, but we can't forget that we sold a property for 30 million. By any stretch, the largest land sale in London's history, I think, per acre. That's really done us well. And then we divided out the proceeds into different things. And going back to the question that was asked earlier about how we got the budget down, we didn't do it with reserves. In fact, we didn't even touch our tax rate stabilization reserve at all. But we did add to it the use of the proceeds from the county building are going into tax rate stabilization. They're going into the costs of paying for we did have a rent that was coming from 50 King Street, so that's going in. And then the final piece is into, I think there's 4 actually, I'm gonna forget the 4th, but the final piece is going to the county loan program. So we're expanding that consistently with whenever we get these funds, we're expanding that program. And the idea is that we need to support not only residential growth that council has had the program for, but how can we use that money to support greater infrastructure growth? And so it might be 2 programs because we're looking at whether or not there's a way to create special economic zones where that would be basically industrial parks that are supported to support more industrial growth. So that's what that's intended to say, is that it's got to expand into more than just residential. We also have to spend some of that money supporting it. So I don't know what it's going to look like when it's done, but I do know that there's going to be a really valuable piece of expanding into those special economic zones whenever we get them.
No, thank you. And I don't think there was any further questions. So again, thank you for coming out. Thank you for the great presentation and have a good night. Thank you. Okay, I've got a recommended motion here that council receive the Middlesex County presentation and budget highlights as presented for information. Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of minutes, that regular council meeting minutes of April 2nd, 2024 be approved as circulated and amended. Moved by Councillor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? That's carried. Business arising from the minutes. Staff did not pull any. Does anyone want to comment on any of them that are sitting there? Seeing none, recommend a motion that items 10.1 through 10.x.
Just
say
say
the
correspondence
items, be received for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Reagan. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. Committee reports. Blue Water, I've got a meeting on Thursday this week. CDC.
Just very quickly, Mr. Deputy Mayor, there was so attached for council is the minutes of January 31st and the draft minutes for March 27th. There's also a survey there that is sort of the highlights of a survey, that are there for council to review if they wish. It was a question sent out to local businesses, just talking about some of the specific things we can use to improve it downtown. And that's just for council's review. So we attach those to the minutes, and I have nothing further, sir.
Was there questions on that? Hodgins?
Thank you. Through you, not a question, just a comment. I just encourage my colleagues to take a read of the business survey summary. We got some great feedback, and just wanted to thank staff for summarizing that into a nice 3-page document. So just thank you.
Yeah, and it's funny. I wanted to comment on that too, and I get frustrated with surveys, and that's hopefully they're not this. Maybe this isn't the case, but it's action and non-action, and explaining why potentially you proceed with some of the input and you don't. And to me, you don't need to be a yes person to a survey at all. To the comments or to the or different things or input that they have or things, but the action to the survey though, or non-action, what is the CDC, is there any plan to get back and comment on the survey of action or inaction and reasoning for it? Like,
So,
that's probably, surveys typically get it's hate to say this word, I know Madam Mayor hates when I use it. Surveys sometimes to me are feel good.
yes.
Just a feel good thing, get filed, done.
So
what's,
So I'm going to refer to actually Lisa to answer that if I could. See what the plan is.
Thank you. Oh, I can't see myself. Hold on. There we go. Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. So the committee looked at the survey and already a number of items on there they've actually started to do action on. So there were a number of things we thought that's a great idea, little things that we could do right away on them. And then I think a lot of the other comments could be dealt with hopefully when we receive some grants. But definitely a lot of action items in there that we've already identified that we can definitely do even this year. So yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, there was nothing further, I don't think, on that. Like Huron, nothing, fire boards, nothing. Jaden? Or Counselor?
Yes, for Sable Bayfield Conservation Authority, I was just gonna note, last Thursday, the Conservation Authority hosted their 34th annual conservation dinner. It was a great event. Both Deputy Mayor and I attended, as well as some other residents from Lucan Biddulph. Great attendance, 340 people, raised a lot of funds to support initiatives within the watershed. I think they were looking at close to $50,000, and they just were waiting for the final numbers there before they announced it. So it was a great event, and great to see that support from Lucan Biddulph, and also Lucan's own Donnelly Cafe did cater the event, and it was a great dinner as well.
Thank you. No, I would echo everything you said. Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Hodgins? Nope, seeing none. Going on to Parks and Rec.
No, there's nothing at this time to report, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. Staff reports. I'll pass it over to Ron. I believe you're going to speak to 12.1A and B.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So the first report before council tonight is CAO-06-2024, and this is a bit of a follow-up report from the one that was done at the previous meeting, and that is in regards to the purchase of air packs for the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board. We were able to, I believe, answer some of the questions as to why is there only one supplier, and really the answer to that is fairly simple. That the type of air pack that is required or needed for Biddulph Blanchard to be interchangeable with the air packs that Lucan currently has and St. Mary's currently has is this type of air pack, and this type of air pack is only supplied by one supplier, and that's AJ Stone. And the chief there did confirm that number one, that AJ Stone is the only authorized dealer in this area. And also that the Canoe Buying Group, which is through the AMO organization, they are not authorized to sell this MSA brand. So that was not, we couldn't really get a price from them, as they did not supply the type of equipment that was called for. So, and then just a bit of a follow-up, the Council for the Township of Perth South passed a motion at their meeting held Tuesday, April 2nd, granting an exemption to their procurement bylaw or policy to allow for the single source purchase. So the actual cost of the purchase is let's see here, $181,708.52, and that will be paid for out of their existing reserve account. And so the recommendation to council is that the report be received for information, and further that the council grant a quote single source exemption under the provisions of the township's procurement policy number 100-55-2019 for the purpose of purchasing air packs in the amount of $181,708.52, including HST for the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area.
So what I'm going to do here, Ron just read the motion, so I'm just going to ask first someone to move it, second it, and discussion. Doesn't move by Councillor Westman, second by Councillor Reagan.
Discussion.
Now questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So my question is for Ron, if I may. So when we talked about this the last time, there seemed to have been a question about following process and procedure. And I know that I had a bit of a problem with that, and I know might have one or two other members of council. I'm just wondering if that's been rectified as well. And I understand about the single source. I understand. I get that. I've read the report. But I was just concerned about that part of it. And I just wanted to make sure that that's been rectified.
So through the Deputy Mayor to Councillor Regan, to answer your question, yes, I think that has been addressed now. We're gonna end up at the same place. However, you can't put the cart before the horse, and that's really what has happened. So we're trying to, or we will be reviewing the policy with not only the fire chief, but also all senior staff. I think it's a good opportunity to sort of refresh everybody on what the procurement policy is currently and what needs to be done and what those levels are. So, I think the lesson's been learned, and we will be better going forward.
Right. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Any further questions? Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Ron? Point B.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. The second report is CAO-07-2024, and it's in regards to the information technology agreement with the County of Middlesex. And this is a bit of an update from the previous one. The county completed an IT review in 2023, and I'm not going to read the whole report. You've got the report in front of you, but I'll just summarize a little bit. COVID really did a number on IT services, and many thanks to the county staff for helping us pivot and being able to sort of set us up on Zoom. They've helped us with the cameras in the council chambers. So they've really stepped up. But in order to be able to do that, it's garnered a lot more of their time, and obviously time is worth money, and it is not a cheap endeavor. They've hired more people to be able to respond to our needs and our demands for their time. So there's a little bit of updating. We've gone through, or actually I should say, Middlesex Center had their legal team go through this agreement line by line, made some few changes. So we've been able to piggyback on their review. So I'm not suggesting that we need to send it out to our legal team. I think that's just not good use of taxpayer money. If it's good enough for Middlesex Center, it's good enough for Lucan Biddulph. So there is one change to the report, and I did ask the question, and then I didn't go back into the report after I asked the question of Chris Bailey. But the impacts to budget, the wrong figure is in that the last sentence. It says the 2024 annual service cost for the County of Middlesex IT is 26,525, and that's the wrong figure. It should read 32,000. And my apologies for that oversight, but that is the amount that we did budget in our approved budget for this year as well. So
I thank you, Ron, for that. I do have a recommended motion. Before I read it, I will ask if there's any questions. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My question was just answered. I was just going to ask about the difference in the cost there, because the agreement referenced 32,000. So that was answered. The schedules of the services weren't attached. I wouldn't mind seeing that information just to see exactly, what the services are that the township's being provided. But I'm supportive of. I don't necessarily need to see that. So supportive of the recommendation.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Hodgins, just to quickly address that. We did talk about that, but there's some items in that schedule that shouldn't be public for cybersecurity reasons. So we can certainly provide that to you if you want to see that, but it was specifically not included for that purpose.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I've got a recommended motion that report number CAO 07-2024 be received for information, and further that the council instructs staff to bring forth a bylaw authorizing the execution of an agreement between the County of Middlesex and the Township of Lucan Biddulph with regards to the information technology services. Moved by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? That's carried. Building bylaw, there's finance. We got some cabinet, nothing. Planning. Anything further, Dan? I believe you are going to make a comment.
No, I'm good. I'm kidding. Through the chair. Yes. So from planning's perspective, we've had a few interesting things happen over the past week here with respect to a new bill that was tabled by the province. So Bill 185, the Cutting Red Tape to Build Homes Act. It was tabled on April 10th by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And it does generally target housing changes and does propose amendments to 15 different provincial statutes as well as the associated regulations. So the announcement also included a release of a second iteration of the previously proposed provincial planning statement, which will replace the existing provincial policy statement as well as the growth plan. Growth plan doesn't obviously affect us. So the county right now, we're kind of going through a more or a deeper dive into what exactly it is that is proposed. It is a very comprehensive legislative change that does affect, again, 15 provincial statutes. But we have generally developed some categories that we think are kind of the primary interest for the county as well as our local municipalities within the county. So of those, there's 13 key areas that we're currently reviewing. Number one is the proposed elimination of the Planning Act fee refunds. So that we see that as a positive change for the like review process of applications. We did hear a lot of concerns that applications were being kept in a pre-consultation phase. Municipalities were refusing to accept applications because they effectively just didn't want to have to issue refunds on fees. So we're hoping that this kind of brings us back to the way we did things before, where we can work collaboratively both with staff, with the developers, to come to resolutions on a lot of these different planning applications and files. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. One of the major changes that we've identified is the removal of, or proposed removal of third-party appeals for both official plan amendments as well as zoning bylaw amendments. So that's huge from planning's perspective. We saw that happen under the previous bill with respect to minor variance approvals and consent approvals. But effectively, this would limit any appeal right to anyone who did not make the actual application. So what does this mean for our local municipalities? We're still digesting that. Some may think that it could mean if applied retroactively, that our municipal comprehensive review that is currently subject to third-party appeal may no longer be subject to appeal. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. We've also noted that general planning responsibilities for our particular area do remain unchanged. That's not to say that it's unchanged for everyone. We did see that the province is moving forward starting July 1st with removing planning authorities for the region of Halton, Peel, as well as York. So they are working at decentralizing their planning responsibilities back to their different local municipalities and upper tier governments. We saw the introduction of some particular interesting policies respecting universities as well as colleges. So there's a new subsection of the Planning Act that would exempt publicly assisted universities and colleges as defined in those specific acts from particular Planning Act applications. So that basically exempts them from having to come and talk to at least me for approvals. Pre-application consultation. So we saw through previous changes to bills, the province added in a pre-application consultation requirement for all applications. We did technically see this as a bit of a positive thing, both from the county's perspective, from the local perspective, and even from the developer's perspective, because it helped us kind of establish what our review criteria were going to be for those complete applications. So like we always say, it's better to pre-consult with us so you know what you're getting into than to just come at us and see what happens, right? So we kind of see that as maybe not necessarily a great change, but at the same time, it doesn't say you can't do pre-consultation. It just says it's voluntary now. So A lot of, I would say, the development community that we work with does find benefit from those pre-consultation discussions, because again, it establishes what the parameter is for moving forward with their development on their site. We saw the introduction as well of what's called use it or lose it policy. So there are several changes that are proposed that would give municipalities the authority under both the Municipal Act and the Planning Act to withdraw water supply and sewage capacity allotments subject to certain criteria that they're going to develop. So this includes a new provision where plans of subdivision that were draft plan approved prior to 1995, which did not, or which now do not lapse, will lapse with if they're not registered within 3 years. So this is an attempt by the province to basically say, developers, you're not going to sit on land. We want you to build. So from our perspective, I mean, from the county's perspective, I don't necessarily see this as a bad thing. We want to see development proceed that is being approved. Obviously, we know the current climate has drawn back a lot of that over the past, 2 years, specifically last year. But I think there's positive movement forward. So I think this is an attempt by the province to say, okay, please proceed with building as their main goal right now. Development charges. So we saw several potential changes to restrictions on municipal authority to level development charges. That was under previous acts. They're now talking about undoing those changes. So again, we're still unpacking what exactly that means, but it does look like they're potentially removing those phase-in periods for new development DC charges. It also looks like they're going to backtrack on municipalities being able to collect for development charge studies. So that's big for the municipalities as well as the county. We did see some changes to minister's zoning orders. It did talk about community infrastructure and housing accelerator processes that were introduced through Bill 23 that are proposed to be repealed and replaced with a new framework. So we're still kind of waiting to see what that would be and what the potential impact would that be. We saw changes to the additional residential unit provisions that are in the Planning Act. So the minister is proposing to give a new regulation making power to remove zoning barriers for small multi-unit residential developments. So we're looking at situations where, the province established certain criteria for additional residential units. Municipalities may be pushed back a little bit on that. So the province is now taking a little step further, as how I see it, as to pushing forward that type of residential tenure within the county in general and across Ontario. I'd also note that they've introduced provisions with respect to Municipal Act bonusing. So what does that mean? So they have amendments are proposed to the Municipal Act that would allow municipalities to provide direct or indirect assistance to many different manufacturing, industrial, or commercial businesses, whereas this activity was previously prohibited. So we're still kind of digesting what this is going to mean and what the impact is going to be within the county. First thoughts would be from the general consensus is that it could encourage competition between municipalities to attract these types of industries. Maybe not necessarily a bad thing, but it is noted that potential is out there. And then I would say they also added provisions to notice of Planning Act applications and different modernization techniques. So not necessarily just relying flat out on newspaper articles and sending out notices. So it does provide a little bit of flexibility to the municipalities, just given that we are in a more newer age of society where most people gain their information from alternative sources than the local circulated newspaper. So provincial policy statement changes, there's a lot of proposed changes. We've identified a few that may provide additional consideration from the county. But what I would say is what we saw last time with the residential lot creation, the rural areas, the province has walked back on that, which they kind of indicated they would consider walking back on that, or at least reconsider their initial proposal. So if you recall, the original provincial planning statement had permissions to allow for 3 residential land severances within our agricultural areas per farm parcel. So under the new draft policies, they are maintaining the pre-existing prohibitions on non-agricultural lot creation within our agricultural areas. So from the county's perspective, we would definitely see this as a positive benefit. We're trying to protect our agricultural resources. We're definitely trying to redirect development to our urban settlement areas. That's where we're investing our money. That's where the infrastructure is going. So I think that's a positive change in this particular, at least from the county planning perspective. Additional residential units, again, through the PPS, it does propose to include a policy direction that would allow for up to 2 additional residential units on a prime ag parcel, subject to different criteria. So we're looking at what those criteria are, and whether or not we have the ability to add in our own criteria into our official plans. I know as a response to a lot of these considerations previously, we took a proactive approach to that and actually crafted policy within our local official plans through the comprehensive reviews to look at additional residential units and what the permissions would be within our agricultural areas. So it's likely a situation that if this does proceed, we'd have to go back and look at that and make sure that our proposed policies are in alignment with what the province is now saying in the provincial planning statement. So generally speaking, they would permit 2 additional detached residential structures on a farm parcel, subject to, again, the criteria. So I guess we'll wait to see what the result is of that. One of the major changes as well, which was kind of there in the previous iteration, was the idea of the settlement area boundary expansions. So the 2024 draft proposes to provide flexibility in terms of planning horizons in which municipalities shall plan for. So it requires a minimum of 20 years, but it also sets a maximum of 30. So if you remember under the previous iteration, they essentially said you have to plan for a minimum of 25 years of growth. So this walks it back 5 years to 20. It's still above the 15 that was the previous requirement. But it does, however, cap it at least at 30. So we have something to work with in terms of a bottom line and a top line for our growth strategies. And I would also say that the draft document has softened the requirements for settlement area boundary expansions, and did provide greater flexibility for municipalities as well as developers. So it's still providing the potential opportunity for privately led settlement boundary expansions. I would also say that there is consideration to add language that would allow for proposed official plan amendment by third party appeal rights. So sorry, not third party, first party, but under the current draft policy, if a municipality was to fail to make a decision on an official plan amendment, they could then appeal that to the board to make a decision on that. So that is a potential interesting impact to us. So on the one side, we see the reduction of the third party appeal rights, but on the other side, we see the introduction, which currently doesn't exist, of someone being able to appeal a privately initiated settlement boundary expansion. So it's quite interesting. From the county's perspective, it seems to be that there's more of a defined growth responsibility for the upper tier authority, as how I would phrase that. So the 2024 draft would require that the upper tier identify and allocate population, housing, and employment projections, and identify areas where growth and development will be focused. So from the county's perspective, it certainly may require a more fulsome review at the county level as to what the province is intending for us. My initial thought would be the requirement of a growth management strategy within the county's official plan. So as you may be aware right now, the county's official plan doesn't actually identify settlement boundaries. It just identifies settlement communities, and it leaves it up to the local municipalities to then determine their own boundaries. This potentially would create or introduce the idea of putting settlement boundaries within the county's official plan. So at that point, the county is effectively dictating where growth will go. So something for consideration. So like I said before, we're still like, the proposed changes are very comprehensive. We're still going through a lot of it to kind of figure out where it impacts us at the county level, where it impacts our local municipalities as well. I would say generally, there's a lot of positive changes here. Certainly the walk back in terms of the development charges, that type of thing, the fee reductions and refunding. It's definitely positive for us. There's interesting things that they're proposing as well. But like I said, this is posted. It's posted for consultation right now. The consultation deadline is May 10th, 2024. So the county will be putting together a consultation, a response to the consultation, and hopefully any comments that we have, whether it be at the county upper tier level or at the local level, that that those can be heard by the county, and clarification can be provided from the province. So I'm certainly available to answer any questions. Keep in mind, this is very new, so we're still digesting it. But if anyone has any questions, I'm available.
Well, thank you for that. I will look to council if they have any questions. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you. You mostly answered my question at the very end there, when you said the county would be providing comments through the ERO or whatever it is. Overall, like, you know, you said there's some positive things in here. So overall, are we, you know, happy with what's being proposed? Is it going to be a positive review we're going to give them, or I guess, are there bigger concerns, or what? Or it's just it's hard to keep up with almost, right? Like, further to the discussion we had, what the services county provides. I mean, we're lucky that you guys are on top of this, because for us, it's certainly challenging to follow all these bills and changes. But just overall, like, you know, is it good changes, bad changes, both? And what do you think that response will look like, briefly?
Yeah, so through the chair, what I would say is certainly we've been in a position over the last couple of years to have an opportunity to go back and review our existing development systems, and whether or not there are efficiencies that can be made, and where we would see the efficiencies best suited versus where others do. So it's a really hard question to answer, honestly, because here in Lucan Biddulph, you could think one thing is great, and in Middlesex Center, they could think that's terrible. So from the broad, like, overall perspective, I think I'll probably reserve comment at this particular point in time, and wait for the county's official response to come through the warden. But with that said, I see positives and I see negatives, like with anything. So but I think it may be a situation where you could say, well, maybe the positive outweighs the negative in this particular case. And a lot of the positive that I see would be the reversal of things that have happened before.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think the one that stuck out to me the most was the reversal of the development charge phase-ins, because, you know, it just, to me, it didn't make sense. They're taking money away, money that is being collected to pay for infrastructure and growth projects. So they're taking it away, and then now they're trying to provide grants and funding for this. So why take it away in the first place? Because it's just making it harder to build the infrastructure needed. So anyway, thanks for all that information, Dan.
Any further questions of council? Well, Dan, you said you've seen positive, negative. Do you see a timeline?
So through the chair to the mayor, I wouldn't even want to speculate, to be honest with you. So what I would say is that from what I've been told, the bills received first and second reading. The consultation's open until May 10th. We've seen the province move before the end of consultations in the past. We've seen them respect the consultation period in the past. So we would hope that they at least would not make a decision until everyone's had the opportunity to provide input and then at least digest that input. And if changes are necessary, to come back to the table and make those changes. So I wouldn't be able to comment on a timeline, but at least we know there's a deadline of May 10th for consultation.
Thank you. And then there was no further questions to Nan. Okay, thank you. Gotta apologize, Jeff. You know what? You can get on that mic and say, listen there, Deputy Mayor, I got a non-report. I got to bring up something, but anyway, sorry about that. Don't have nothing? Okay, no, sorry. Planning, no, Public Works is gonna have Ron just comment on our Good Roads delegations coming up this weekend.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So just so all of council knows, we have been granted 3 meetings with the minister, or in some cases parliamentary assistant, some cases deputy minister. But we have been granted 3 meetings. The first one is with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. The second one is with the Ministry of Transportation. And the third one is the Ministry of Infrastructure. So there was only one we didn't receive, and that was the request with the Ministry of Education. I would suggest that there was no need for that after the $25 million announcement that was made, I think 2 weeks ago now. So yeah, we are in the process of preparing those presentations, and they'll be ready this week for the members of council and staff who will be attending. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor comments, or no, was there economic development? No, nothing there. No. Councillor comments, any? Councillor Westman?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Public Works for the green bins been brought in a little bit early. In light of the windstorm that happened over the weekend, it was well received. I got a lot of great comments from people. Very grateful to have them available. So that's great. Thanks so much.
Thank you for that. Any further councillor comments? Councillor Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. I just want to remind everybody about the pitch-in cleanup day on Saturday morning. We'll meet over at Market Street Park, right? I think at 9 o'clock. I think that's when we're looking.
I think it might be 9:30. Is it?
9:30? Okay.
Yeah, so
sorry.
9:30.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. Just wanted to remind everybody and come out and volunteer. Thank you.
Councillor Westman?
Yeah, just further to that, and I have it on my agenda to say that we're doing electronics recycling at the park at the same time. So people can bring their unwanted electronic devices to the park for recycling. All the proceeds will go to supporting the programs of the Scouts and Guides. If anyone needs them picked up, they can call, and my number's available. They can call me, and we'll get someone out to pick it up and help them out. Okay.
Thank you. Any other further council comments? I don't either. Okay. Accounts paid here. I've got a recommended motion that council of the Township of Lucan Biddulph receive the attached accounts as paid for information as follows. March 2024 total $1,892,366.88. Move for a seconder. Moved by Councillor Westman, seconded by Councillor Reagan. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Bylaws. That if no one cares to speak to bylaws 17-2024 and 202-2024 on their first, second, and third reading, that they be considered to have been read a first time and passed, read a second time and passed, and read a third time and passed. Moved by Councillor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Westman. All in favor? That's carried. Adjournment. Resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:05 by Councillor Reagan, seconded by Councillor Westman.